no!
Hello again, everyone. I'm Germain, host of INFOcus People and Places. Welcome back. And again, welcome to all our friends out there, our viewers on VCAM in Virgins and Chittenden County, up in Bristol on Neat Television, and, of course, here in the Middlebury area on Middlebury Community Television. Glad to have all you folks back. And, of course, always the invitation is out there for you to go to our website to find out more on this show, on past, present, and future guests and projects that we have going, infocusvt.com. On the program today, we will be talking with NASA Solar System Ambassador Lou Varricchio will be joining us to talk about outer space. Always exciting, educational, thrilling when he is joining us. Lou coming up in just a bit. Also on the program today, we'll find out what's going on with the Addison County Chamber of Commerce. Always many, many projects going on in the world of Barbara Harding. She will join us to talk about news from the Chamber. But when we come back, speaking of news, groundbreaking is already underway, has started. Ambitious building project for these guys, and everyone involved with the counseling service of Addison County. We'll be talking with David Andrews and Peter Lebenbaum. When we come back, find out about that building project and some summer youth projects that they have going as well. The latest from the counseling service of Addison County when we come back on this week's edition of INFOcus People and Places. Welcome back, INFOcus People and Places. Joining us right now, the Director of Development and Community Relations with the Counseling Service of Addison County. He is David Andrews. And David, you've brought a friend.
I have brought Peter Lebenbaum, who works with our youth and family program in a variety of ways, one of which is the Summer Forest Program, which we have every summer up in the Green Mountain National Forest.
And so summer is going to be here before you know it.
It is. I can feel it.
Yeah. Warmer weather is here, finally. Well, David, first of all, let's talk about, well, getting outside in another way.
Yes.
Not too long ago, you and a group of other folks got out there and started shoveling, and your ambitious building project, your expansion, is underway.
We have two big projects going. Yes, on Thursday, April 10th, we had a groundbreaking at Catamount Park for an 18,500 square foot brand new building. And that will be housing our developmental services programs, the programs that we have for people with mental retardation and other kinds of developmental disabilities. And the administrative offices for the counseling service will be in that building. And as you may know, we built another building in Catamount Park back in 2003, and that's going to be taken over completely by youth and family programs, all of the children's services, adolescent services that we offer, including an educational program with which Peter is also involved called the Champlain Valley Academy, which is a program for kids who have enough emotional stress in their lives so that they're not able to function too well in the public school classroom for a period of time. That's currently located down on Route 7 South, but that's going to be part of this new building, part of the existing building in Catamount Park that we'll be turning over entirely to.
So a lot of consolidation here.
Yes, we're going to have more of our operations in that Catamount Park area without giving up on our presence downtown in Middlebury, because we also are going to do a building addition at 89 Main Street, which is where most of our adult mental health programs are located.
Well, I'm looking behind you here, and you've got the building plans, the ones directly behind you. To the left here are the Catamount Park
That's right.
plans. That's what that facility will look like. And then over to you, well, just behind
think I can
Peter's
reach
head
back
here,
here.
you've got
Yep, that's
the
the
89 Main Street.
Right. And
site.
the addition is at the very far left of that picture. And it will be a two-story addition that will provide some new clinical offices and a group room. And there will also be an elevator in that addition, which will make much of 89 Main Street handicapped accessible for the first time. Right now, there's only really one or two offices that are accessible to people with disabilities. We mentioned consolidation, but are there other underlying deeper reasons for this expansion and refurbishment and consolidation? Energy conservation certainly would be a major consideration. Also, the ability to interconnect all of our programs electronically in terms of communications. We're moving toward electronic medical record system where all of the client records are maintained electronically instead of using paper. And it's very important to have connected systems in order to do that.
And in no way, maybe a small way, but I mean, you have a large clientele. I mean,
We do.
You guys are busy. I mean, for people that haven't used your services, that are not familiar with CSAC, I mean, you're a pretty large organization, and I mean, there's a need out there for your services.
We serve well over 2,000 people a year. In fact, I think recently it's been running around 2,300. And I think a lot of people don't realize that in addition to offering counseling to people who may just need a few sessions of counseling because of something that's going on in their life, we also have people who are clients of the agency year in and year out with more severe needs, people who in previous times might have been either residents of the Brandon Training School or patients at the state hospital. But there's been a major trend in the direction of community-based treatment for practically all mental health and developmental needs these days. So this means we have some very long-term relationships with clients.
And all of this hopefully will make things a little bit smoother in your services. It'll
make it smoother. It'll improve working conditions for our staff. We've got some pretty primitive working conditions in various locations, particularly the building at 61 Court Street where our developmental services are located now. That program is known as Community Associates, and it's in an old house. It's kind of a, I guess you could say, kind of a rabbit warren of little rooms with, many people occupying the same space, people on top of each other. Not a very safe and certainly not a very accessible working environment.
Well, Peter, we don't want to leave you out of all this. Your thoughts on this expansion?
It's very exciting for us. I think in several ways, but primarily because of the close association we'll have with the rest of the staff. Many of the youth and family programs are by design out in the community. We have a lot of programs in schools. They'll obviously remain in the school, but for those that are located in Middlebury, to be able to have staff really see each other instead of in passing at an occasional meeting or two, I think will be really fabulous. And also to have crisis services immediately, physically close by, I think will be really to our advantage as well.
Talk about what you do day in and day out with the counseling service. You work with youth, correct?
I do, and I have for the past 27 years. I currently, what I do is I am the director of the Champlain Valley Academy, which is a half-time position, and which serves 10 to 12 students from the 3 major schools in the area, and secondary schools in the area. And then I also am a school-based clinician for the Diversified Occupations Program, which is at the Hannaford Career Center, and do some supervision for the agency at other times.
Talk about what it's like to work with young people here in the 21st century. What are their needs? What are their concerns? What are some of the issues that they are dealing with?
Wow. It runs the gamut. There are Well, first of all, we serve students or youth from, elementary school and pre-elementary school all the way through high school and beyond. I mean, it's sort of a full range of services. The programs at the counseling service, one of the largest growing programs actually is our services for youth who are, we call on the spectrum or autism. And so we have really expanded the kind of service to elementary schools, not necessarily taking students out of the school at all, but providing some extra support for students in the school and for their families. So that there are some emerging problems that we're focusing on now. I think I would say as expectations of schools have increased, I'm thinking of No Child Left Behind and also community expectations, some of the students who are fragile in the school, they emerge more frequently. And so we've expanded services to students in school through school-based clinicians. Your question is, what are students suffering from? The adjustment to increased school demands. There's dislocation in family life. There's also the kind of emotional problems that adults have, depression.
I was going to say a lot of them, I mean, are things that adults go through, stress.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, students, youth are undergoing physical changes that all but the geriatric population is going through, immense changes in their physical life and adjusting to that, as well as changing social expectations. There are times of immense change for kids, and we find that if we can offer them a bit of support, try and identify some emerging issues early, that the prospects for eventual adjustment are immensely improved.
Where does your summer forest program come in?
Well, throughout the years that I've been at the counseling service, we've made a number of attempts to offer services for youth in the summer, and there are a couple of good reasons for that. One is students have more time, and also it's also a time that there are fewer things offered for kids. And so the Summer Forest Project currently is one of 3 or 4 programs that we offer for kids in the summer. It is probably the largest at this point. What it is we actually have a collaboration. The Summer Forest Project, is a program for students 13 to 16. It's a collaboration between the counseling service and the Forest Service. And what we do is, Forest Service, as you may know, has decreasing funding over the years to maintain the trails that they have in the forest, maintain the forest itself. And so what we do is we have several trails, several areas in Ripton and Goshen that we maintain for the Forest Service. They give us the tools and the equipment, the other equipment, and we provide the students, and we pay them, the youth, we pay them a stipend of a certain amount of money. A little bit varies from year to year depending on how much money we have.
But that's very exciting for the kids to actually be making some money.
Absolutely.
For many of them, it's their first experience of being paid for doing something like that.
It's very attractive for them. And it's challenging for them because we do it in all but thunderstorms. So for 5 weeks, 3 days a week, we meet at the counseling service and travel up to Goshen and Ripton. And clear trails with switches and hand saws. We don't use any gas-powered equipment or electrical equipment. We have generally around 30 groups, 30 per group, 10 in each, and 3 groups, 10 in each group. This year we have so far 51 applications. So there's each year it's grown, and we've decided that we can't safely and effectively manage any more than 30.
Now, where do the applications come from? Are these all clients of CSAC, or
generally
can they
they
come from
are,
us?
Although they may become clients. They generally come from schools and from clinicians at the counseling service. So the issues that all of these students have emotional issues that they need to work on in order to successfully accommodate to school and home life. So at points, during 3 points during the day, the students will make goals, assess those goals, and measure their emotional progress as well as their physical projects. There are aspects of the program that kind of might remind one of an outward bound kind of project. So the emotional benefit is having done something that's difficult, that's hard to do, as well as an increase in self-esteem from actually beginning to earn some money. We have. And
have you been successful in getting that across to
yes,
to
we
the
have.
youth?
I mean, there are many students. We originally said you can be in the program 1 year, and then we need to take some new people. And then we relented because youth wanted to come back. So we said, okay, 2 years and that's it. And now students want to come back again. And
you have a counselor in training program with
and
for some of the kids who've been back.
Yeah, for those students who have been real successful and shown themselves as leaders, we offer for 6 or 7 of those 30 students an increase in remuneration and increase in responsibility, so that they would act as mentors for the other youth. So it's been I think a very successful program. We need to fundraise for it every year, but we get a lot of applications, say from students who are in DCF custody. They rely on it. I think the community is relying on the program to take care of the emotional needs of youth who are at risk.
If there are parents that are interested, how could they get more information on that?
They should call the counseling service. Main number, I think, probably, and ask for Tammy Johnson at this point at the counseling service. By this point, frankly, the interest would be for next year.
Yes,
because
the program
you're just about
program is full for
we'll start. We actually do the month of July, but we do some preparation for the mentors, for the counselors in training, and that will be beginning in June. So we do have a waiting list, but I would imagine that it would be quite unlikely that students will be able to be served this year. Although there are other programs, summer programs that we do have, and if there were families that were interested, I would encourage them to call the counseling service to see what might be available.
It's very important to keep these kids busy.
Right.
Yes.
And to give them an experience of succeeding at something. Yeah. One of my jobs is to raise the money for the stipends that the kids are paid.
And how do you do that?
In various ways, by appealing to the public for donations, foundations, and so forth. And if there's anyone viewing this program who's inclined to be supportive to the program, it would be great to hear from them. We're able to pay the costs of the clinicians, their salaries, out of the counseling service general budget, which is largely from Medicaid funding. But when it comes to these stipends, that's money that we do need to raise each year.
Are the youth programs where CSAC would like them right now? What does the future hold, David, for programs such as
Well, I'm probably
Peter's
not the
been
right
talking
person.
about?
Probably Peter's actually the one who ought to be
Peter, what does the
answering
future look like?
Well, I think the Summer Forest Project is really a good example of that. We want to be able to serve as many youth as can be served. Our mission is really to serve them as much as possible within our county. I think paralleling the experience of the adult population, whereas David mentioned there's no longer a Brandon Training School. The census at the state hospital for adults is dramatically decreased. We want to be able to serve youth in our community, and I think that's really one of our major focuses now. So a reason that we are supplying school-based clinicians to schools so that kids don't have to leave the school for day treatment programs elsewhere. For those elementary school youth who need to be served in the school. So I think that's really a direction that we're moving in, and I think that our new educational treatment program is a good example of that as well.
And of course, you got the expansion. Quick update: when should the whole project be done?
We are hoping to be able to dedicate the new building at Catamount Park in December, and perhaps a month later, the addition at 89 Main Street.
Wow!
All depends on how construction goes
and the weather
and so forth. But we're ready to make some progress.
David Andrews, final thing: phone number.
388-7189.
6781.
6781. I don't call this number.
True. It's like your home number.
Let's see here. Okay.
6751.
6751.
Oh,
388-6751. There we go.
I should have this at the tip of my
Disregard
tongue.
every other number that they mentioned.
Right.
That's right.
Peter, David, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
congratulations on the groundbreaking and, well, what seems to be a very speedy expansion project.
And we look forward to welcoming all of our friends in the community to see this new building, these new buildings when they're built.
All right.
Thank you.
Look for that later this year. That is the Counseling Service of Addison County. When we come back, we're going to head to outer space. There we go. With our rocket ship known as INFOcus, People and Places. When we come back, yes, we will launch things with Lou Varricchio, who is our Vermont Solar System Ambassador for NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. That's right, we have a Solar System Ambassador in our midst. When we come back on INFOcus, People and Places. Welcome back. As promised, we have our very own Solar System Ambassador from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also known as NASA for short, Lou Varricchio. Hi, Lou.
Hi, Jerry.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're also an author. We should mention that while we're at it.
Yes.
Inconstant Moon.
Yes, my first and only book so far. I have another book planned, and that will be a compilation of columns that I write for a couple of weekly newspapers.
I'm sure people
Vermont,
are very
upstate
familiar
New
with
York.
those.
Yep.
Lou, why do you do what you do? Where did you get this love of space exploration?
Well, I think I can thank my second grade teacher, Miss Wiesner, who I have no idea where she is today or if she's even still on this planet. But this was back in the year 1962, the time Mariner 2, which was the first really U.S. interplanetary spacecraft that flew around Venus. And I was very interested in this because this second grade teacher brought a television into the classroom and made a special effort to first get the kids interested in what could possibly be on Venus and how we were going to go there, and someday maybe people were going to go there. And that sparked my interest as a young kid. And I've dabbled in and out of it. For a time, worked for NASA as a science writer, worked for the University of North Dakota, produced a public television program about space science, and in particular how it was applied to agriculture up in the Midwest and Upper West and on ranches, and how the farmers and ranchers use satellite imagery to manage their herds and crops. So I've been in and out of it, also with my background in newspaper work. I dovetailed my love of space science with writing and do science writing on the side.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question, something that I've wanted to ask you. I don't think we've really dabbled in it too much in your previous visits to our program, but how has space exploration, how does it, what we've discovered, you know, and the whole science of it, how does it impact us on a daily basis?
Well, that's a good question, and it's certainly a question that a lot of taxpayers ask when they see the cost, and it's a high cost for space exploration. And there's a large, well, I won't say large, but there's a very loud, vocal group that think it's a waste of money and we could better spend it here on Earth. And I don't necessarily disagree with that argument, but there's a lot of people who are very interested in space, and they tend to be the silent majority, like they are on so many other issues, is they don't speak up. They don't let their legislators know that these kinds of things are important. But down to earth, I guess I would divide it into two things, the practical and the etheric benefits of space travel. And by etheric, I mean more in the realm of philosophy. In other words, as humankind expands their horizons literally into space, it opens the mind to other worlds, possibly other life forms, just the scale of time, what goes into creating planets and larger structures like galaxies. And that's important, I think, to humanity because it stimulates the mind. It maybe brings us, so to speak, down to earth in saying that humans aren't that big, we're small in comparison to the universe. And plus, then we know more about this wonderful universe that we live in, and which is still pretty mysterious. The second, more practical things are the technological benefits that have come out of the space program. Electronics, microelectronics, the miniaturization of electronics in things like, MP3 players, heart monitors, a lot of medical equipment, even UV eyeglass protection in your lenses that change in sunlight. All those things really came out of the space program. Not just the civilian side, but also the military side. And a lot of people argue that why are we wasting money on the military? All the military does is kill and maim. I'm not getting into that ethical argument,
Right.
but a lot of aerospace technology was parallel, that is the civilian and the military side. So those technologies that were developed for one were used with the other. So they're intertwined in some ways, less so now, I think, now that the Cold War is over.
Right.
There's the civilian program is kind of on its own. The Defense Department backed away from manned space programs. Back in the 60s, there was planned to launch a military space station called Manned Orbiting Laboratory, to build a military shuttle. All those things sort of went by the wayside, not because of their expense, but I think the military realized they would put less people in harm's way if they automated things, relied more on robots,
Right.
That kind of thing.
You mentioned the 60s, early 60s, when you kind of got this love of space and the universe and the exploration of it. And, of course, that was the era where we decided to go to the moon.
Yes.
And made that happen. Let's talk about the Constellation program, the return to the moon. How is that going?
Well, I think it's having a little rocky road right now, as is the case with any big retooling of a program. In this case, a whole new set of rockets, a whole new set of manned spacecraft, and all the support infrastructure that goes into that. Sometimes NASA can be a little overambitious in thinking, well, we can do this in X number of years, when it might take a little longer, and it might take a little more dollars to do it. Right now, the big problem with the Constellation program, and it's certainly not a fatal problem, but it's a technological problem. There's two things. One is the development of, there are two Ares-class rockets. These are going to replace the Space Shuttle rocket. They're based in part on Space Shuttle rocketry. Primarily the solid rocket boosters that you see on the Space Shuttle will be adapted to use. There will be two rockets, two Ares rockets. One, it's a single rocket that will launch the manned or crewed portion of the Constellation program, and that's the vehicle called Orion that looks like a big Apollo spacecraft. And then there's the big Ares 5 rocket, which is almost as big as the old Saturn V. And that's a huge fuel tank with two big strap-on solid engines. That rocket's going to require a lot of new infrastructure, and that will boost the parts for this program that will be assembled in orbit. Like when we go back to the moon and then on to Mars, the landers, the supplies, all these things will be launched into Earth orbit. The little Orion spacecraft will rendezvous with them, dock, and then they'll go out as a little fleet, if you will, armada, off to the moon and Mars. So There's some engineering problems with the smaller Ares rocket, and they're doing computer modeling tests now, and they've done some engine tests, which are doing well, but the rocket itself is shaking pretty violently. So the engineers have to figure that out and solve that problem, and I think they're up to the task, and that will happen. It's like any new piece of hardware. The other thing is the heat shield for the Orion. They're having some problems with the composite material, and they wanted to go back and look at the old Apollo data because Apollo had developed such a great heat shield. It's unlike the heat shield used on the shuttle. They're not tiles. It's one composite material. Interestingly enough, they've lost some of the paperwork to that. You know, so how many 40 years ago? One would think, geez, you know, isn't that in a file somewhere? Or, well, you know, like any bureaucracy, things get lost and misplaced, just like in your house. If you want to go back and look at your tax return from 40 years ago, where did I put that? And I don't think that's real critical, but the news media has sort of played on that, you know, as they do anything that looks like there's a flaw in the armor, a chink in the armor, they'll go after it. And but I don't see that as, for the people I've talked to at NASA, you know, that's kind of a minor concern at this point. The bigger problem is the vibrations on the one Ares rocket.
So it's still many years off.
Well, it is, and it's also going to create a problem because there's going to be a delay between when they technically should be retiring the shuttle, which has already outlived its usefulness and its lifespan. It wasn't built to be used this long. And when this Orion's going to be ready, because Orion is going to be a replacement for the shuttle. It's a versatile enough spacecraft system that it will be used for lunar and Martian and even asteroid exploration. The thing is, what do we do in maybe the 4 or 5 year gap after they retire the shuttle? The aerospace people say they can keep the shuttles flying with limited flights, which is not what NASA wants. NASA wants more dynamic, more aggressive flight schedules. So it looks like the Russians are going to step in and do their part because they're international partners with the space station. So you'll probably see more Soyuz rocket and Soyuz spacecraft, both the rocket and the little space capsule are both named Soyuz. So they'll step up their production of a couple more Soyuz spacecraft and rockets to fill that gap. And then when Orion's ready, probably, I'm going to guess, I'm usually pessimistic in the time scale. I'm going to say 2015 is probably when that thing will be ready to fly. They're saying 2012. I honestly don't believe that's going to happen. And we're having likely a big change in the administration, in Congress. We don't know if a new Congress is going to continue to support this program. I hope they will. I hope they see the benefit to the United States, both in developing technologies and keeping our leadership position in manned space exploration.
Lou, do we know where the primary candidates for president, where they stand on the issue of space exploration in NASA?
I think both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama seem to be very pro-space. You know, I think they would probably make some adjustments, but I think overall they're very supportive of the space program, as well as John McCain on the Republican side. So I think the existing candidates, I don't know, who's going to be the Democratic nominee, but I think they're supportive of it. I think when you get down into the level of Congress is then you get the battles of, well, I'd rather spend this money in my home district on this program, and this is more important.
Of course.
And manned space program always gets the hits. The unmanned, I mean, you'll hear the scientists say, oh, they're cutting us back, but manned space exploration, and when I say manned, I say that in the mankind sense, not being gender specific, but it does cost more because you have to create environmental systems for the human beings who go into space. Unlike the robots. So, but what you find, especially with young people becoming engaged in the space program, it's people going into space that ultimately get people interested in space. And I mean, the goal isn't just to get people interested. Obviously, it's exploration and discovering new things, developing new technologies, developing engineering procedures and things like that that are new and put us in a leading edge position. So I think ultimately, whether there's less manned and more unmanned, vice versa, it's beneficial to the nation, and it trickles down, you know, even to the high school level, where we have high school kids involved in developing some test science projects, if you will, that are being used on the space station and will be tested out on the moon and Mars. So, you know, while everyone can't participate in the space program, more and more people get to touch their finger in it.
That's great. Speaking of people in space, and you mentioned the space station, the Japanese and Canadians are making some news up there on the space station.
Well, we just recently helped the Japanese with their enormous laboratory that was attached to the space station.
That's the HOPE module?
Yeah, the space station's now growing about the size of a football field when you consider the solar arrays that are on it. I think there's still a few more arrays they have to put up and a few more modules, but the thing is almost completed. It's an enormous structure. It's a great scientific benefit. I mean, they're doing a lot of microgravity work up there, getting a better sense of how humans adapt and or don't adapt to microgravity, what are some of the countermeasures that can be used to get people more adapted, plus just the fraternity of the nations of the Earth, not all of them, but a lot of them getting involved in the space station project and probably beyond. And then you mentioned Canada. Canada's been a leader in developing new robotic technology for use on not only on the space shuttle, but on the space station. And now that enormous robotic, rather humanoid-looking thing, it's about 9 feet across, that's on the end of the space station, and that has manipulating hands that will lift out some of these heavy supply modules and things that they need to do more work on the station.
Well, there's so many things to talk about and so little time left. But Lou, let's see if how many of these things that we can talk about. Let's talk about Mars, things still happening on Mars.
Yes.
It's getting kind of crowded in the area around that planet and the moons. Avalanches, salt has been filmed on the red planet, and as a matter of fact, the Phoenix Mars lander going to be landing probably, wow, by the time this airs, right around the time this airs, in late May.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on Mars these days?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of activity, both the United States and Europe. We planned to beef up Martian observations. As a result, there's a number of spacecraft both on the surface and in orbit around the planet. We just had a fantastic photo of one of the moons of Mars, which was probably an asteroid that was captured by Mars's gravity field millions or billions of years ago.
I was not aware that Mars had moons.
Yes, there are two
little
moons.
You don't hear a whole lot about that.
Well, they're actually, they both have mythological names, Phobos and Deimos, and they were the two, I believe, nasty dogs that were the war dogs of the god Ares or Mars in Roman mythology and Greek mythology. So it was kind of neat that they kept the mythological, and they have the same companions as the mythological god of war. And of course, Mars is red; it's that color of blood. And but yeah, the moons are actually considered to be good launching pads to land on Mars. In other words, you don't even have to put a space station around Mars; you've got them right there. Very, very low gravity. Doesn't take much energy to land a spacecraft on one of those moons, and they're close enough that you can easily get people down onto the surface. So it would be a good staging station. And this photograph basically revealed that they're we've had pictures of them, but nothing this sharp or this close. They're cratered. They look like two enormous potatoes floating end over end. And they're dark material, probably volcanic type of material, either ejected off a larger body that broke up or part of a body that never really formed. But yeah, you could, if you're standing on Mars, you could see both moons from a certain latitude. Below a certain latitude, you won't be able to see them. But you could see the two of them sort of racing each other across the sky. They're not going to be as impressive as our moon is from our sky, but you'll see these little, what look like satellites in the night sky zipping across the Martian sky. But a lot of work being done up there.
Yeah, we're quickly running out of time. Can you tell us a little bit about the salt deposits that were found?
Well, the salt deposits provide a fair amount of evidence that there was some kind of a body of water, probably a salt body, that when it evaporated either through the disappearance of the Martian atmosphere, left behind the telltale sign of a body of salt water. So whatever bodies of water, whether they were large lakes or if you want to call them seas, and maybe not quite oceans, probably like the Great Lakes, were salty and heavily salty. And so this is the first evidence of that theory, and it's bearing out some of the computer models of what ancient Mars was like. And
around May 25th, look for the Phoenix Mars lander to make news.
Yeah, if you have cable or satellite TV, most everyone gets the NASA channel as part of that package. Look, you can watch. They'll have live coverage of the landing and pictures from the surface of Mars.
And what is the mission of the Phoenix lander?
Well, again, this is to do a little more geological work, examine the soil, continue to look for water, make telltale signs of the chemistry of water, deposits, minerals that were formed in water. So again, it's building on what the robots, the little rovers, have been doing, and it's still that focus on Mars had water. It probably still has water. Was liquid water there long enough for life to have formed, evolved?
NASA Solar System Ambassador for the state of Vermont, Lou Varricchio, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, always very fascinating. When we come back, this fascinating edition of InFocus People and Places continues. We'll be wrapping things up for this edition with Barbara Harding from the Addison County Chamber of Commerce, joining us with the latest news from the Chamber when we come back. Welcome back. As we have promised you, we are going to get an update from the Addison County Chamber of Commerce. Always a lot of exciting things going on there, not only in front of the public, but behind the scenes as well, with the fine staff there. And we've got one of those members of the Addison County Chamber with us right now. Barbara Harding returns to the program. Hello.
Hello.
You are the Tourism and Marketing Director?
Yes.
Or has your title changed again?
It's going to be changing, but that's fine for right now.
What is it going to be changing to?
Well, it will be Marketing Director.
Just marketing?
Right.
Somebody else going to tackle tourism?
No, tourism will still be a part of it, but it's...
You're consolidating.
Very good word. That's it, exactly.
Consolidating seems to be the word of the day.
It is.
I believe so. What falls under that umbrella of tourism and marketing, Barbara, within the Chamber?
Well, it's primarily attracting different avenues of attracting visitors to our area, as well as continuing to educate people who live here as to what there is to see and do, and well, basically that's it.
And you have many tools. You have your, you know, your online tools, the websites. You got a couple of websites,
which we'll be condensing to one.
You've got things. Well, for example, this little kind of bulletin board thing you've brought here.
It's a display.
This display situation that you brought with you, and many other avenues as well, I'm sure. You've got your print media, you've got just a lot of different things.
A lot, yes. Print, various publications. We also have a display that goes around the state to various welcome centers, and that's made up of different products that are produced in our region. And let's see, well, you mentioned the website, publications, displays.
Even radio ads
travel
as
shows,
well? Audio?
print advertisement.
Okay.
All sorts of, and MCTV.
And our show, INFOcus, there you go.
INFOcus, yes.
Now, you brought one of the things that you've been busy with, I know you want to touch upon, is the Mid-Vermont Heritage Guide.
Yes. This is a piece that was done actually several years ago, but it has a 2 to 3 year shelf life. And what makes it have a
Just put one
shelf
up in front here of the camera
right.
so that
is that there is
picture of this here.
an additional piece. It's what we consider a bookmark with updates so that it is current. And our website does have everything current on there.
I mean, this is very helpful stuff in here.
It is.
If people, no, first of all, how do people get a copy of this? Who gets a copy of this? Anybody?
Anybody and everybody.
Okay.
It's available on our website as a downloadable PDF. It's also what one would consider live on our website. So then there are pages for each of the loops. And what it is, it's a driving tour of our region and how they can visit farm stands, galleries, artists in their studios.
Yeah, just as an example here, I will give out, you know, I mean, it's got information on the Vermont Folklife Center,
Yes.
our buddies over there. I mean, it's got their, you know, their mailing address, their physical address. They've got phone numbers, fax numbers, where you can reach them online, and then a little brief description, and it gives their, you know, like if there's a cost to get in.
Sure.
And, you know, their hours of operation. I mean, everything you could possibly want.
But again, it's set up that they could start, well, like the very first tour is called Shores of Plenty. And that actually starts at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. And then there's a map in the guide where it would take you from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum to the city of Vergennes, where people would be able to park their car and visit the Opera House and various other places right within the city, and then hop back in their car and start touring the countryside, where they would end up at the Shelburne Museum.
Very good. Now, did you, I think I've asked you this question before on the program, did you actually sample this to see if it works?
Oh, yes.
You went out and did everything?
Yeah, because you know what was interesting is that when you look at a map and you plot it all out and you think, well, this makes a lot of sense. Then when you get in the car and you start driving, it doesn't make sense. And it's hard to explain, but you would think that, oh, this works, but then when you're actually in the car, on the road, you see different things, and this makes sense. If I turn right here on this road, this will actually be shorter. But on the map, it's hard to explain, but on the map itself, it doesn't work out.
Okay.
Because it's been a couple of years, I can't think of a really good example, and I used to have an example of how that doesn't work.
Okay.
It's kind of screwy, but
It's okay,
trust
Barbara.
me, it
That's all right.
works.
Yeah.
So it's good to get in the car, and as well as just to experience too.
And it's good, like I said, to just have the information, because I'm sure people, you know, every now and then have questions like, you know, what are the hours of the Shelburne Museum, you know, and what is the cost, and you know, things like that, and contact information is always helpful. And like you said, there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of crafts places in here, like the Vermont Folk Rocker, for example, in Starksboro. And then there's always the Open Studio Weekend. You've got a little write-up on that, and a website where you can get more information. You've got libraries and
historical societies.
sites.
There's a few recipes in here from some, a couple of, well, there's a cookbook from the Vermont Bee Association using honey, and it's a cookbook that is really not, it's hard to find now. It's a paperback that was done by the Vermont Department of Agriculture, I believe. And so it was nice to find a recipe that we could include because of the apples that are grown here, the apple trees, the bees that we needed to pollinate. So there was some really interesting things.
And you know, now that the warmer weather is here and everything is dried up pretty much, you know, people will definitely are getting outside, walking more, hiking. You've got information in here on the Robert Frost Interpretive Trail,
Yes.
the Spirit in Nature Interfaith Trails. So, Dead Creek Wildlife Refuge. I mean, people always love that out there. Yeah, as you mentioned, the historic sites. I see Chimney Point is in here, Crown Point, the DAR, John Strong Mansion. There's a lot of things. This is really cool.
And it is set apart from other publications that we do because it deals with the cultural heritage of our region.
Right.
And so this is primarily that. This represents what our area says, and it's also to help visitors experience what we offer.
That's the Mid-Vermont Heritage Guide, a tour guide for discovering Addison County, Vermont. It's really cool. Very nice. Again,
And this
that's
is
what it
our
looks
second
like.
edition.
Second edition, okay.
Yes.
All right, so you've added some stuff. You've tweaked it a little
We
bit.
tweaked it, and right now currently getting updated information from the participants as to whether or not they've changed their hours, their website, including if they've closed their doors.
Ah,
There's a few that have.
okay. So where can people get the Mid-Vermont Heritage Guide again? What's probably the easiest way? Stop by the
They could
Painter
stop
House?
by, right, they can stop by and actually pick up a printed piece, or they could go online and they can see the listing. It's done as tours, so they'd be able to click on the tour that they want and just read it, or they can download a PDF.
Okay.
Where they'd have a printed version.
We will have, well, what you can do is you can simply, visit infocusvt.com, our website, and we'll have links over to the appropriate sites where you can get information on this.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and again, you guys have 2 websites.
We do currently have 2 websites, but we are in the process of combining those sites.
Aha. It's about time, because I think it could be a little confusing.
It was confusing. It was part of a grant that we had. We were awarded from Vermont Department of Tourism Marketing, and they wanted the chamber activity separated from the tourism activity. That requirement is no longer needed, so now we can go back and have the one site. Yeah, it makes it, as the webmaster, it makes it a lot of
That's another one of your duties.
Yes. So that makes it difficult to maintain both sites.
Okay, so that's the Mid-Vermont Heritage Guide. You also wanted to talk a little bit about the quad.
Yes, the upcoming.
The quadricentennial.
Yes. Of
That's
Lake
a large
Champlain.
word.
I know.
That's a lot of
why
years.
we call it the quad.
The quad. All right, the quad. Sounds like some kind of Olympic swimming event. But no, well, I'm sure you've been swimming in information and in lots of things you need to get done before it starts.
Right.
And that's next year?
Right.
2009?
2009, and I believe it will actually be kicked off with first night in Burlington. So that will be...
That would be appropriate.
Isn't it? Yeah. And then there'll be just a series of different types of events pretty much all over the state, not just around the Lake Champlain Valley. But it will be celebrated up and down the lake, across the state, on water, off water. It's the lake, the land, and the people that we'll be celebrating.
Okay. Barbara, the quadricentennial, what is it all about? It's all about the celebration of Lake Champlain?
It's celebrating the lake, the land, and the people.
Okay.
And Samuel D. Champlain's arrival to the lake that now bears his name.
Okay. How many years ago? I mean, it's a quadricentennial.
400 years ago.
400 years. Thank you
Yes.
for doing the math for me. 400 years, wow.
I know.
And a lot has taken place, and there's going to be a lot of celebrating going on next year.
Yes. The information should be available sometime this summer as to what is currently planned. There are some signature events that will be definitely happening. One that will be in our area will be held in September, and that's Festival of Nations. And actually that's been going on for several years. This coming year, 2008, the event will be to rededicate the lighthouse that's over in New York State, right at Crown Point.
Is it going to finally be lit up?
They're working on it. New York State is working on trying to light it.
Okay. Yeah, that just doesn't seem right. I mean, it's a lighthouse.
Yeah.
It hasn't been lit up for,
Yeah,
good grief, I don't know how many years.
A long time.
A long time.
And there used to be a lighthouse building beside it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that there's been some work going on there, so that's all related to that celebration.
And to restore the Rodin that's part of the lighthouse.
Okay. So that's one thing close by that will be going on. Some other things that people should look for?
Well, in May 21st, there will be a FAM trip, a familiarization trip of Lake Champlain on the Carillon. The Carillon is a cruise that goes from right at the Fort Ty Ferry.
Okay,
right near there.
Shoreham.
And it's going sort of much the lower part of Lake Champlain. And Captain Paul will be guiding that tour and will be explaining the history that happened there, as well as the talking about the fauna, the birds, and the natural history.
Okay. And that's all southern Lake Champlain stuff.
Yes, and then it'll take in Fort Ticonderoga, Mount Independence, Chimney Point.
Okay, all right. And is that open to the public?
It is primarily for businesses and organizations, so they're in preparation for the quadricentennial. But it is open to participate. It's free, but people would need to contact me to be able to RSVP, because we do have a limited number of space, obviously, on the ship.
Okay.
Or the boat. What do they call it? Cruise.
Yeah.
Boat.
Cruise boat. Okay. It's not the Love Boat, but it's,
No, it's a little smaller.
the Carillon Cruises. I'm sure people are familiar with that.
I'm sure.
I mean, they're busy throughout the summer with those
Yes.
those trips.
Yeah, very popular.
All right, so that's coming up in late May for that. How is the word going to be getting out? Through all media about the quadricentennial?
Yes, yes.
People will see things in the papers.
There will be a special
television.
publication Vermont Life is I believe, going to be producing, and that should be available sometime, I think it's fall, late summer. And there has been a number of press releases. I know that our chamber has hosted a series of workshops and informational meetings to help people prepare for the quad, to learn more about it, to tell how they can be, businesses and organizations, how they can get involved.
I would imagine that there will be numerous celebrations, family events, and most likely probably historical reenactments,
Yes.
fireworks, parades, all of that stuff. It's going to be a big time next year.
It is. And the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum will be one of those organizations that will be leading a lot of the different events with the Lois McClure.
Right. Yeah, all right, so we're looking forward to that party time
Yeah.
next year, the quadricentennial.
Definitely.
400 years since Samuel D. Champlain made his way down the lake.
Yep.
All right. So that is going to be keeping you busy. Let's backtrack just a bit, Barbara,
Sure.
if we can. Let's talk about let's go back 2-3 months from now. And how did winter go as far as tourism?
I think it went pretty well
Yeah.
with the snow that we had.
We had a lot.
We did. I haven't seen any numbers yet.
Okay.
I think it's a little too soon for that, but I believe skiing was up. The conditions were perfect. From the Snow Bowl to Reichert's to Blueberry Hill Inn Cross Country Ski Center. So I think that...
Haven't heard anything negative?
No,
Okay.
I really haven't. So I think it was a good year, and Vermont really needed that.
They certainly did. Certainly did.
It certainly felt like winter.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that again. That was, I'm glad that's done with.
Is
Moving
it?
on.
Is it?
I think that only happened once, that we had snow in July, and I think that was due to like a volcano in the Pacific.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that's another story.
Okay.
We're not here to talk about
No,
ancient
no, we're here to talk about
disasters.
spring and yeah, yeah.
So they're keeping you busy over there. You've got your new director, executive director, still fairly new. Tell us a little bit about him.
He's been there for over a year now.
Just been over a year?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
January, February. But it seems like he's always been there. He's great and leading us through some great changes that just having the chamber look at itself and determining where is it that we want to go from here. What are our long-term goals, short-term goals. So I think it's been appropriate and it's been a lot of fun.
For people not familiar with the fact that you have a new director, he is?
Andy Mayer.
Andy Mayer. And as you said, been on the job for just a little over a year maybe. So that's great. So you're moving forward. You've still got Ted Shambo over there who's signing up businesses and everything.
Right, he's our membership director.
And you're located in the Painter House.
Yes.
And people are always invited to come by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Check it out. I mean, you have a great resource center in there. I don't think we really talk about that a whole lot.
It would be great for you to come up and show it. We have
Maybe we will sometime.
a business library. We, of course, have brochures from all over the state. And
it's not just for, you know, for, I guess, tourist attractions, you would call it. Let's say the Morgan Horse Farm. But you have information on area businesses, services, and a lot of other resources as well on upcoming events. And one thing that we should certainly mention is maybe just quickly run down some of the main events that you have going on, such as French Heritage Day. I know that's coming up in July in Vergennes.
You want the date?
Do you have the date handy?
I do.
She brought her calendar with her.
Calendar.
I believe it's July 12th.
Well, it's actually 2 days. It's the
2
night
days?
before. It's the Friday night as well as Saturday.
Okay.
An all-day event Saturday. So it's the 11th,
And
Friday night.
And
the 12th.
Okay.
You're
All right.
so much better than me. Vergennes Day is the 23rd of August, and actually it's the 22nd and 23rd. They do have some events in the evening going on at the Opera House.
Okay.
And then Bristol Harvest Fest, which will be September 27th.
All right.
All day
I hope
Saturday.
you folks out there are, you know, marking these things down.
Or contact the chamber and or check out our website.
Hopefully Barbara will have her calendar with her.
Yeah. Names and dates.
And then, of course, we're on into the colder months, into the fall and everything.
We won't go
and you
there
have
yet.
things going on around Halloween. And also, of course, you'll be back, you know, back with Christmas time and the holiday strolls and all that. Wow, we just covered a lot of
Let's get back
time
to
there.
summer.
Wow. Yeah. So, things going on, Quadricentennial we're looking for, and of course, grab one of these, folks, the Mid-Vermont Heritage Guide. You can pick one up at the Painter House, right up there at the top of Court Street in Middlebury, and lots of information in here that I think will be very helpful.
Thank you.
And of course, you have a couple of websites. How about a phone number?
Local, it's 802-388-7951.
Why do my guests always have such a tough time remembering their
know.
phone numbers?
I don't know. 388-7951. We do have a toll-free number, which is 800-733-8376.
Yay,
I know,
Barbara.
I give that out all the time.
And of course, as we always encourage you, go to INFOcusVT.com for more information. Links over to our guests' websites. In this case, it would be the Chamber.
Thanks.
So there we go. We're helping you out.
Thank you.
All right, Barbara, thank you so much. She is the Tourism and Marketing Director, soon to be just Marketing Director. But it encompasses all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And a big thanks to you out there for tuning in to this week's edition of INFOcus People and Places. We'll have another exciting jam-packed edition next week for you. On this edition, we want to go back and thank the folks from the counseling service of Addison County, Peter Lebenbaum and David Andrews, for coming in, talking about the exciting expansion projects going on over there and some wonderful kids programs for the summertime. Our solar system ambassador from NASA, that would be Lou Varricchio. I want to thank him for coming in and talking about what's going on in our world and the world out there, the universe, the stars and the planets. And Barbara, I want to thank her again for coming in and talking about what's coming up with the quadricentennial and oh so much more going on with the Addison County Chamber of Commerce. Again, go to infocusvt.com for information on these guests, past guests, future guests, all the good stuff. Our world, known as InFocus People and Places. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm Germain, your host. Until next time, take care.